The images are stark and unsettling. Entire cities submerged under murky brown water, desperate residents wading through waist-deep currents that were once bustling streets, rescue workers in bright orange vests navigating inflatable rafts past the rooftops of homes. This is the scene from southern China, which has recently been grappling with what meteorologists and hydrologists are calling a once-in-50-years flood event. The scale of this disaster is difficult to comprehend from afar. We are talking about rainfall totals that shattered all previous records, turning vast swaths of densely populated provinces like Guangdong, Fujian into inland seas. The very fabric of daily life has been torn apart for millions of people. These floods are not just another severe weather event, they represent a significant and alarming escalation. The term 50-year flood itself carries a weight of immense gravity, signaling a catastrophe of a magnitude that is rarely witnessed. It suggests a natural disaster so powerful that it overwhelms even the most robust infrastructure, designed and built over decades. For the people on the ground, this is not a statistical anomaly, but a life-altering reality. It means losing your home, losing your business, losing your farm, and in the most tragic cases, your loved ones. The term 50-year flood can be misleading. It does not mean that a flood of this magnitude will only happen once every 50 years. Instead, it is a statistical measurement of probability. A 50-year flood refers to a flood event that has a 1 in 50 chance or a 2% chance of being equaled or exceeded in any given year. It is a way for scientists and engineers to classify the severity of a flood and to design infrastructure, dams, levees, bridges, to withstand a certain level of risk. Thinking about it in terms of probability helps us understand the immense power we are dealing with. It is a benchmark for an extreme event, one that lies far outside the realm of ordinary seasonal flooding. So, why are these floods considered so rare and so serious? The answer lies in the sheer volume and force of the water involved. A 50-year flood event pushes natural and man-made systems to their absolute limits. Rivers swell to levels that spill far beyond their established banks, inundating areas that are typically considered safe and dry. The pressure exerted by such a massive quantity of water can cause levees to breach and dams to fail, leading to catastrophic flash floods that offer little to no warning. For communities living in these floodplains, the difference between a 10-year flood and a 50-year flood is the difference between manageable disruption and complete devastation. The rarity of these events is precisely what makes them so dangerous. Because they happen so infrequently, a false sense of security can develop over time. Decades can pass without a major incident, leading to urban expansion, agricultural development in high-risk floodplain areas. People build homes and businesses forgetting or underestimating the latent power of the river nearby. When the 50-year flood finally arrives, it catches entire communities unprepared. Infrastructure that may have seemed adequate for years is suddenly overwhelmed. Emergency response plans are tested in ways that were only ever simulated, and the human and economic costs are tragically high. It is also important to note that as our climate changes, the very definition of a 50-year flood is coming under scrutiny. What was once a 2% chance event may be becoming more common. The statistical goalposts are shifting. The 50-year flood of the past could very well become the 20-year flood or the 10-year flood of tomorrow. The immediate cause of these devastating floods in China was a series of relentless, slow-moving weather systems. These systems were laden with an extraordinary amount of moisture drawn from the abnormally warm South China Sea. They stalled over the region for days on end. Instead of passing through quickly, they acted like a fire hose, dumping torrential rain continuously over the same river basins. This phenomenon is often referred to as a training thunderstorm effect. It's where new storms form and move over the same area repeatedly. The result was rainfall totals that were not just high, they were astronomical, measuring in the hundreds of millimeters within a matter of hours, completely saturating the ground and overwhelming drainage systems. These extreme weather patterns directly impacted China's complex and sprawling river systems, particularly the Pearl River Delta. This region is a confluence of multiple major rivers, including the Xi, Bei, Dong, which all drain into a single, low-lying delta. When record-breaking rainfall occurs upstream across this vast catchment area, all of that water is funneled downstream towards the same exit point. The rivers swelled to historic heights, and the sheer volume of water moving through the channels was more than they could handle. This created a compounding effect, where high river levels prevented tributaries and urban drainage systems from discharging their own water, leading to widespread and prolonged inundation far from the main riverbanks. The impact on people has been nothing short of catastrophic. Millions have been displaced from their homes, forced to flee with only the possessions they could carry. Imagine waking up to water seeping under your door, and within hours, having it rise to your chest. Families were separated in the chaos, seeking refuge on rooftops or any high ground they could find, waiting for rescue that was stretched thin by the sheer scale of the disaster. We have seen harrowing images of elderly residents being carried through flooded streets, and children being passed from boat to boat. Behind each of these images is a story of terror, loss, and profound uncertainty about what the future holds for them. The floods have delivered a crippling blow to the region's cities and infrastructure. Southern China is one of the most urbanized and economically vital areas in the world. Guangzhou was inundated, Shenzhen was inundated. Public transportation ground to a halt, with subway stations completely submerged. Power grids failed, leaving millions without electricity and cutting off communication lines. Roads became impassable rivers, bridges were underwater or structurally compromised, severely hampering rescue and relief efforts. The cost of repairing this extensive damage to public and private infrastructure will be astronomical, likely running into the tens of billions of dollars. In the face of this monumental crisis, the Chinese government launched a massive and highly coordinated emergency response. Rescue workers in an orange raft helping an elderly resident. Aerial of flooded neighborhoods and military trucks moving in. The People's Liberation Army and paramilitary police forces were mobilized on a grand scale, deploying tens of thousands of personnel to the hardest-hit areas. Their mission was multifaceted: to conduct search and rescue operations, to evacuate trapped residents, and to reinforce or repair critical infrastructure like levees and dams that were on the verge of collapse. We saw state television broadcasting non-stop coverage of soldiers filling sandbags and using heavy machinery to divert floodwaters, a clear message from Beijing that the full power of the state was being brought to bear on the disaster. Local authorities and emergency services were the first line of defense, though they were quickly overwhelmed by the scale of the flooding. They worked around the clock, operating rescue boats through treacherous, debris-filled waters, and setting up temporary evacuation centers in schools, stadiums, and other public buildings. These shelters provided essential aid, including food, clean water, and basic medical care to hundreds of thousands of displaced people. However, the sheer number of people in need stretched these resources to their absolute limit, highlighting the immense challenge of managing a disaster that affected a population larger than that of many countries. The importance of these floods extends far beyond China's borders. The affected region, particularly the Pearl River Delta, is a linchpin of the global economy. Satellite night view of the Pearl River Delta. It's one of the world's most densely packed manufacturing hubs. It's also a major shipping hub, home to countless factories that produce electronics, clothing, furniture, toys. When this region grinds to a halt, the entire global supply chain feels the tremor. We are already seeing reports of major ports being closed, ports operating at reduced capacity, and factories being shut down due to flooding or power outages. This will inevitably lead to shipping delays and product shortages on store shelves worldwide in the coming months. The disaster also has significant implications for neighboring regions in Southeast Asia. Many of Asia's great rivers, including the Mekong, are transnational. Map, the Mekong originating on the Tibetan Plateau and flowing through multiple countries. The agricultural sector has been decimated. The fertile plains of southern China are the country's breadbasket, responsible for a significant portion of its rice production. China is the world's largest importer of soybeans. China is also the largest importer of grains. Such a surge in demand could drive up global food prices, affecting consumers everywhere. The link between a localized weather event and the price of food on a family's table on the other side of the world is a stark reminder of our interconnectedness. As the floodwaters in southern China slowly begin to recede, they leave behind a landscape of devastation and a host of urgent, unsettling questions. The most critical of these is whether we are truly prepared for the next one. This event, once considered a statistical rarity, may be a harbinger of a new and more dangerous era of climate volatility. The scientific consensus is clear. As long as the planet continues to warm, we must expect extreme weather events like this to become more frequent and more intense. The 50-year flood could become a far more common occurrence, testing our defenses and testing our resilience in ways we have never experienced before. The challenge of preparedness is monumental, especially for a country as vast and populous as China. While the government's investment in sponge city concepts and reinforced infrastructure is a step in the right direction, retrofitting sprawling megacities is a task of staggering proportions. Protecting endless miles of coastline and riverbanks is a task of staggering proportions. It requires not only immense financial resources, but also a fundamental rethinking of urban planning. This requires a global effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and transition to a sustainable future. And the question remains, will we be ready?